Welcome to the show where we discuss the first Marvel Netflix series and discern the truth about why this show stands above the rest. The elements of quality storytelling other shows are blind to.
But not
But
the show.
not the show. Join us as we start Discerning Daredevil. That's right. And tonight we are talking about Season 3, Episode 7, Aftermath.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, Dragon, I don't want to linger on this, but just for anyone who's anticipating oh man, Comic-Con, Marvel dropped some big stuff last night that we are certainly going to talk about on the channel, folks. Don't you worry. And it's wait, why are they talking about a Marvel show from a year or two ago? Well, folks, it's Aftermath, Dragon, so I feel like it's appropriate that we're kind of in the wake of the big Phase 4 drop. But rest assured, folks, we are going to get to the big Phase 4 drop with special guest, Super Academy writer, director, Jacob Gulliver. I believe this is the first time we've had him on since, I want to say the Infinity War podcast, Dragon?
Well...
Perhaps a debate?
I know the Infinity War debate for sure, yeah.
Uh-huh. So, yeah, very excited to hear his take, of course. We'll ask him. We still haven't heard from him about his feelings on Doctor Strange in Endgame. Not much screen time, but we always like to check in on him, when he sees Doctor Strange stuff. And, of course, him being a huge Doctor Strange fan, I'm very, very excited to pick his brain on Doctor Strange. And what is it, Dragon? And the multiverse of madness.
I believe that's it, yes.
All right, so very excited for that, folks. We just need to iron out the scheduling with Gulliver, so that's why we're not doing it tonight. Rest assured, if Gulliver wanted to do it tonight, we would have done it tonight. But, we're kind of waiting on that. Anyways, I just wanted to get that out of the way just in case anyone was watching and being like, well, why are they talking about Hall H right now? And folks, just rest assured, it's because we got a really good guest on for that, and we want to just accommodate his schedule. So.
And the last time I saw this much inside baseball, Bullseye's childhood coach got killed. So let's.
Jesus! All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so Dragon, without further ado, let me switch the card over and let's get into plot.
Yes. All right, plot in a nutshell, folks. So. Everyone deals with the aftermath of Episode 6, in essence, Bullseye's attack on the Bulletin, framing Daredevil. A lot of murder, a lot of destruction, a lot of near death, as well as just really blood-spattered death. Nadeem interrogates Karen and begins to question, and basically his interaction with Karen Page leads him to question Fisk and his involvement, and if Fisk is working an angle on the FBI. All the while, Matt investigates the replica Daredevil suit, which leads him to his old pal, Melvin Potter.
Melvin.
Yes. Meanwhile, Foggy makes some headway in connecting the dots on Fisk and what Fisk is up to and how to potentially bring him down. So Foggy's making some major headway this episode after, again, the near-death experience they suffered in Episode 6. And after a sobering battle with Melvin, Matt visits Nadeem to get on the same page with him. That's the episode in a nutshell.
All right, cool. Okay, cool. Let's get into arcs. Starting with... We'll be starting with Dragon. We're starting with Matt, of course, obviously. Duh.
Yeah.
All right, where do we start out with him?
Well, I guess starting with Matt, so in terms of Matt's arc for the season, where we check in with him here, it's like one step forward, two literally bloody steps back. As he tries to follow this the path that Sister Maggie is trying to open him back up to, trust, go to your friends, try to basically they're in hot water.
It's not like you're gonna get a guy killed and a bunch of innocent bystanders killed, and and
wearing the very
shootout.
Wearing the very suit that embodies you at your prime.
Right.
All of that. Just to twist the knife in a little bit further. So it's like Matt opens
I'm Daredevil.
Exactly. No, it's just so just the bitter irony of, you know what, Matt, he finally gets on the same page. You know, I'm going to be the Daredevil I was, opening myself up to my friends, working with them, and just getting on like the self-healing page, like the anti-stick page that
Right.
Maggie's been putting me on. And the minute he does that, just a lot of death. And in the aftermath, of course, aftermath being the operative theme of the episode in many senses of the word, aftermath here, he reflects on what he did wrong in his approach, and again, just basically blaming himself for everything that's going on. Literally soaked, just blood soaked, and just like still like basically freshly wounded from what we left him off.
I love how he's just like I love how that. I'm sorry. Okay, good. We don't have a dynamic with Maggie, so I can talk about it now.
Yeah.
I do love the dynamic with Maggie here, where they've really evolved at this point, where Maggie's just like, all right, shut up and let me clean your wounds. All right, stop waxy poetic about this situation.
Yep, and of course, like, I just love the matches. Like he's all about kind of like the bigger implications. Like, oh god, look how wrong I was, just making the big platitudes in a good way. He's making the platitudes in the good ways. Maggie's like, okay, just let me stitch you up, or I'll keep my mouth shut. Just let me stitch you up. That's the thing. So he, this episode, he stitches up his wounds. He gets up, and he plays it smart, looking into the suit matter. Like, again, so as Maggie points out, well, he was wearing a Daredevil suit, right? Not you can't exactly walk into a store and buy that. So again, it's Matt kind of doing whatever. It's kind of Matt Murdock 101. Whenever he gets hurt severely, he kind of stitches himself up, and he approaches the situation in a smart way. And of course,
kind of like Matt Murdock's version of the Parker luck. You know what I mean? It's like Matt Murdock's version of the Parker luck is just being severely beaten.
Well, again, the kind of personalizes the Daredevil. Again, it's kind of the Jack Murdock, and where again you get life knocks you down, you get back up.
Sure.
So again, it's like going all the way back to the first episode. You could see Murdock's don't give up. Murdock's get up and he's battling the guy in the ring at the very first episode. Anyway, so basically, he's and it's so fascinating, so full circle when you really think about it, Tiki. Is that way back when he got into his fight, was kind of cut the ribbons by when he was cut the ribbons by oh god, it's I don't know why. Darn it. Nobu. Sorry, I was going to say something else. It's Nobu. When he's beaten near death, sliced to pieces by Nobu, the prime hand assassin.
Mm-hmm.
After the episode, if I remember, after the Fisk of it all in episode 8. I'm sorry, I'm trying to. Okay, no, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. It's been a while, folks. Forgive me. So yeah, 8's Fisk, 9 he goes after him, which leads to the Nobu fight. And basically, once he's after the Nelson versus Murdoch episode of 10, I believe 11 onward, that's where he meets Melvin Potter. Because after that, he licks his wounds and he plays things smart by kind of figuring, okay, well, he cut Fisk's suit, and of course he had this under armor thing with his suit. So therefore, he kind of pieced it together, which led him to Melvin, which essentially is kind of where he goes this episode. It's kind of wonderfully full circle when you think of it that way. It's kind of history repeating itself, which is kind of the DNA of this season as a whole.
Well, what's interesting about that is it kind of speaks to our theory of I don't know, maybe episode 8 is kind of like the apex of each Daredevil season.
Yeah.
I don't know about Marvel Netflix as a whole, but maybe just Daredevil in general. Although this season, I would wager episode 8, episode 9 is the episode 8, but we'll get into that when we talk about it.
There's a lot of the fascinating thing about season 3 is there's so many episode 8s they just outdid themselves. You could almost any episode.
Would you like to explain the episode 8 thing, Tregan, for anyone?
Basically, folks, episode 8 is our shorthand, where episode 8 seemed to be a running trend. They kind of got broken as the Netflix shows went on, but as far as Daredevil goes, episode 8 is kind of the
it at least very much applies to Daredevil and Jessica Jones season 1. I feel like that's where it applies the most.
Yeah. Where again, basically, the idea is episode 8 was Shadows Under Glass, and that was the big Kingpin backstory episode. It's a masterpiece of an episode. And you have then basically, it kind of evolved until in episode 8 and 9 are usually the villain has a tremendous episode. Then you have kind of the heroes episode that kind of is kind of the reflection of episode 8. And you kind of have that going on with season 2 of Daredevil, and here as well. And the point being, episode 8
was a weird one because episode 7 was the big cotton-mouth death.
But 8 also had an 8 fit the mold as well, because I had the big brother revelation. That's a really good one.
And the big, didn't that one have the Harlem battle as well? The Apollo Theater battle.
Yeah, that's the Apollo Theater battle. Yeah, that's 8. The point being, episode 8 is just usually a benchmark of exceptionalism within the Netflix shows, specifically Daredevil. And again, it seemed to be a running trend for him as far as Daredevil and as far as some of the early, at least the first seasons of the Netflix shows went, Iron Fist notwithstanding. All right. So back on point here. So Matt, so in essence, what Matt's doing in this episode, in the aftermath of kind of facing an evil version of himself in his prime, wearing essentially everything Matt kind of thought of himself when he was a superhero, wearing the Daredevil costume head to toe, a guy just kind of in his prime, like kind of like the Daredevil versus the Hand in Defenders. We got just kind of an evil version of that via Bullseye. He got the crap beaten out of him, and now he's confronting the rejected path of the superhero. And or in other words, kind of the religious angle of it all, kind of the faithful servant to God. That's kind of what the representation of the red suit is to him. So that's why he's saying, like, he buried the red suit. He buried just the faithful servant / superhero without question. And in confronting, and that's basically what he's doing, kind of chasing this whole Bullseye mission. Like, who's the guy who's in the suit? Like, who's caused all this terrible stuff in my name? Why is Fisk is framing me using this guy? Of course, you could reach deeper into it as we kind of the last episode where it's kind of tainting the name of. Fisk has already tainted the name of Jack Murdock by framing Matt Murdock, and now he's framed Daredevil. So now Matt has no place to hide. So he needs to. So Fisk is just getting more and more powerful, and Daredevil has to kind of like try to get a leg up on the competition here. And in trying to get a leg up on Fisk, in terms of making the strategic choice, as he kind of tends to do, especially when he's kind of beaten near death and just recovering from that, as he is often, Matt makes a big choice this episode. He makes a big, and not necessarily a good choice, a smart choice, but not necessarily like the right thing to do here. Matt makes a choice not to save someone, and basically kind of falls into. Basically he chooses not to save someone, and again, this brings us back to the whole Daredevil full circle idea here, where it's this idea where he's choosing not to. In choosing not to save someone, it's also like it's the slippery slope idea. Like if he's just
kind of like going from Matt Murdock to Frank Castle almost.
To an extent, yes. Maybe not Frank Castle as the operative comparison.
Yeah, not Frank Castle, but just like someone who doesn't necessarily care as much about the casualties.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm having.
Okay, regardless.
I feel like both those examples are poor. So
okay, well, I guess just to kind of phrase it, I guess to frame it differently. This choice haunts Matt. We see this wonderfully kind of brought to us.
It's not necessarily like a malicious act. It's more of like a self-preservation act.
Well, basically, when he chooses not to save someone, this is the line that he walks between hero and vigilante. Vigilante doesn't necessarily have to do the heroic thing here, where again, Matt is making the choice that again, if I save this person, it's going to put me in jeopardy, and it's going to make things so much harder for me. And I'm not. He has a little bit of wiggle room. He has kind of a loophole where again, I don't really have a lot of options here. And if I save him, it would just make me more of a target. So I couldn't save the day in the grander sense. So he's not making a villainous choice, but he's a little bit more self-involved choice versus kind of the selfless heroic thing where things are going to be twice as hard for him. But again, he would have gone the heroic path. And we have this wonderfully kind of framed in the conversation he has with Fisk. And I have a big comparison I'd like to make. I'm going to save it for when we get to kind of like some of the exceptional elements of the episode there. I think we'll get into a better comparison what we're going for here.
Okay.
At the end of the day, when he's faced with the consequence, the aftermath of this choice of you chose not to save someone and that person's life is probably going to be ruined, but again, you have a chance to save the day now, he makes the proactive choice. He makes the proactive choice not to do things necessarily the way he's done before. So again, he kind of, as much as he wants to break himself of making the same mistakes that he's made, where, okay, if I believe in my friends, if I make these alliances, I'm just going to take people down with me, he finds some wiggle room. He walks a line where he makes the proactive choice going back that way, where, okay, I'm going to get Nadim on the right page. He visits Nadim's house and he gets him on they get on the same page. Okay, I'm gonna make the smart choice here, where I'm gonna team up with Nadim. I'm gonna cut through all the BS of like, wait a minute, you were that other Daredevil guy, or the idea of like,
right.
He basically wants to clear it and make sure, okay, he knows there are two Daredevils. It's not just one guy, and just then there's some like a black ski masked vigilante of some variety. Point is, it's about Matt making the smart choice, whether it be kind of harmful morally to him or not. Ultimately, he's trying to find his way back from that. I guess that's the gist of the idea with Matt's arc.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to Kingpin, and Kingpin is Dragon, to quote one Hal Rudnick, he's kind of at the height of his powers right now.
Well, let me put it this way: he's a step away from being at the height of his powers. Let's go that far with it. But yeah, I see your point. That Fisk is reveling in the aftermath without getting into the specifics of it. It's there's definitely a power
Oh,
balance.
he's like a fat kid in a candy store.
Yes. Or he's a fat kid looking at Zupa to kind of frame it.
Wait, I'm sorry, looking at what?
Zupa. It's the fancy chocolate cake from season 1. Remember, he shared the Zupa with his mother, the cake.
Oh yeah, right. Okay, yeah.
The Italian cake.
Right.
Yeah, pretty sure it's anyway. So so yeah, Fisk is reveling in the aftermath where everyone else is kind of suffering or being haunted by it, and then the power balance with. And there's definitely a power balance with he and Daredevil. As Daredevil loses power, Fisk gains it tenfold.
Oh yeah.
I do love that.
I love the idea that he's just like, at this point he's got Poindexter on such a leash that he's like, yes, Poindexter does well. He deserves a reprise. And it's like, like there's not, like, he's got everyone so under lock and key that he's basically like controlling like everyone's lives at this point. Like he's kind of the chess master.
Absolutely. I love this though, and this is why I can't say he's at the height of his powers quite yet, because one of my favorite details in the aftermath is that yes, Fisk is gaining power, and of course his the artwork and everything comes back to him, and he's been regaining pieces of he's been regaining his property. He's wearing the white suit and everything. We kind of established this in the previous episode, but of course what we really kind of put under a microscope here is the fact that he's missing a piece of himself, and the goal, as in, he needs Rabbit in a Snowstorm, which is the ultimate representation of Vanessa. And basically, he needs Vanessa and also this painting. So basically, he has everything. Literally, he has everything in his power here, with the exception of Rabbit in a Snowstorm.
Which it's interesting because it's like when you break it down like that, it's like he has everything that he needs, right? Like yes. he's got everything that like functionally he needs to really be on top of this whole situation. And Rabbit in a Snowstorm is really like kind of like subjectively something that he really just wants. But much like Poindexter and just structure in general, like really when you break it down, Fisk needs that painting to fully function. You know what I mean? It's like the power, like he can work from a position of kind of being the underdog in the situation, but Rabbit in a Snowstorm is such a personal thing to him that he's really not complete if he doesn't have it.
In essence, Tiki, I think what you're also saying here is that, again, if we're looking at needs and wants, it's the fact that he has everything. He absolutely has everything he needs. But Rabbit in a Snowstorm, like I guess the metaphor of what Rabbit in a Snowstorm is already is that it's essentially a white painting, where again it's like the idea of like it's something you can't see within the painting. And the idea is like, again, it's something that he thinks he needs, but he doesn't. He just wants this for the sense of what it symbolizes and the connection that it means. And of course, the big power struggle of season 1 was the fact that, again, he had he's all powerful right now. He has like the power that it's like how he was running the Cabal in season 1, but of course Vanessa was kind of the happiness and just kind of the thing that he wanted. That was the thing he wanted more than just the control of New York, and that was that was kind of the bounce that kind of brought down the Cabal, and that's kind of what we're like. Fisk still suffers from that here, where again he has everything he needs, but he's going after the painting. It's not necessarily going to bring him down, but as we get further into the story with the painting, I think we're going to see that even he will come to realize that the painting is an empty gesture. The painting is just it's a symbol and nothing more than basically it's him wanting to please Vanessa, where we're going to find out it's not going to be as simple as he thinks it's going to be.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, so basically this episode we get the scope of Fisk's control of the FBI situation and who's calling the shots and everything. So a little bit as more of that's going to unfold in the next couple episodes, but that's kind of what we're getting the view of now is that he's reveling in the aftermath for sure. All right.
Okay, so Karen, what is Karen up to? Oh man, she is speaking of Aftermath, she's got obviously she's got the most weight on her shoulders after the attack on the Bulletin. The Bulletin is her home. This whole thing was her idea. Correct me if I'm wrong, but several staff members at the Bulletin died, right?
Yes, several died. I don't know how many are in. I know Ellison's in the hospital. I know some of them were like on the borderline of flatline, and then they did flatline. So the point is, like, a lot are injured, if not dead. Most are probably dead. The point being, yes, Karen and Matt probably have the most interesting sense of aftermath in this episode. Matt's trying to learn from his mistakes, and we're seeing the future calls that he would make based on this aftermath. Karen, this episode, her arc, I mean, where we go with it, I would argue, and you can correct me if I'm wrong by all means, I think this is Karen's low point for the season.
Yeah, I would definitely, I would agree to that, especially the last scene she has in the episode.
Exactly, because let's build to that here. So look at what happens to Karen in this episode. Again, so the aftermath, it brings it to that low point where it's at the very least it begins the major descent, and it's the low point that will then get just progressively worse. And we'll see how she's going to respond to this in the next episode, where her response to Matt's death and his return has her affiliation with Daredevil all comes to a head in this episode, where the path that she's been going on since the beginning of this season is she's been acting a little bit more like the vigilante. She's been kind of more acting like Daredevil, where Foggy's been acting like Matt Murdock in terms of how they're representing their friend, and she's been taking a lot more chances than she should. She's been a little reckless. She's been going it alone and just only kind of going to Foggy when she needs him.
Right.
He has all this death at the workplace. Ellison, her mentor figure, her Ben Ellison figure. It's kind of like her Ben Urich figure through Ellison. Is almost killed. I mean, again, when we were watching the episode 6 for the first time way back when, it's like, oh God, did they kill Ellison again? It was such a sigh of relief to see him alive in this episode, but he's alive to deliver some crushing stuff. Where in essence, Ellison, he's kind of shutting her out completely. Ellison is the fact you know who this is. I need to know who's the monster who took out my house. Where again, she's arguing the truth of Daredevil is not the guy who did all this, and Ellison feels very betrayed. So the idea is her past, or the events of season 1, even all of these events come full circle and usually end up in death. Think about it. Like episode 1, her introduction is a coworker is dead. And it's just, I think we bring her back to where we met her in season 1 in this episode. That's what I'd argue, because she loses her job. Her friendship with Matt really hurts her there. Like in the affiliation with the Man in Black, very much like the whole you're a target of the. She was targeted by the Kingpin's men with the whole Union Allied thing, and Daredevil, the man, the whole Devil of Hell's Kitchen vigilante in black, saved her life for the first time there, and kind of. That's what she's known for, as far as many people go news-wise, and I guess it's kind of in the higher circles, at least for a while. And she refuses to betray Daredevil, and this ends up again hurting Ellison and losing. She loses the new path that she set herself on ever since season 1 onward, ever since Ben's passing. Like season 2 onward, the new path, the new life that she's built for herself. Karen Page, the reporter at the New York Bulletin, that life is gone, and basically she retreats at the end of the episode. She retreats to this heartbreaking phone call to the ultimate symbol of her past, the ultimate symbol of all the hurt. Again, past is a negative thing for Karen this season. The past is everything that has kind of hurt and defined her that she's tried to move from ever since the first season, and she returns to the ultimate thing. And big foreshadow for future episodes here. She calls her father Paxton, and Paxton wants nothing to do with her.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to put it as delicately as he can. It's like, look, you can call if you need us, but yeah, maybe not come home.
So Aftermath defines Karen's life ever since what we're going to find out episodes from now. Just the point is, Aftermath of her past is what's defined her and has kind of followed her ever since with the other seasons. Like just all this pain that she kind of blames herself for, and it just continues here, and it just brings her to an utter low point where again even her father doesn't want anything to do with her, and basically she can't escape. She can't escape her past. She can't escape the death that happens to surround her. It's a very tragic kind of episode for Karen Page.
Yeah.
I mean, she literally has blood on her hands too, because we had that thing where she's trying to scrub the little blood spots away on her sleeve. Remember?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
All right.
Very symbolic for sure.
Okay.
Okay, let's get to Nadim.
Special Agent Nadim.
All right. So yeah, he's basically just kind of at the point where he's like, "Oh shit! Like, we kind of got played here."
Yeah, because remember, Nadim is. Here's the thing: Nadim has an out. He does. Nadim has the out of okay. So if Matt had shown up as the plan was supposed to go, okay, we would have had Jasper Evans. He would have said, yeah, yes, I stabbed Fisk. It's all part of a conspiracy, which of course would have basically ousted Fisk and would have set the wheels in motion to save the day, presumably. And Nadim now has the position where he kind of could breathe a sigh of relief. Again, a lot of death and a lot of destruction of this new murderous Daredevil that's emerged, and Jasper Evans is gone. Therefore, there's no link to Fisk. Therefore, he kind of has an out. But again, Nadim being the good man, the good character that he is, the good Madani, one could say.
That's the good Madani.
The good, the bad, the Madani.
Forget about the good doctor. Ray Nadim is the good Nadani.
Okay, in all seriousness, the evidence and distractions aside, this leads him. Basically, his doubts on Fisk have been led astray, but again, this gut feeling sinks in this episode. His scene with Karen, everything, Karen telling him, look, I gave you all these leads, and you didn't follow up on any of them, did you? And basically, he was hoping they weren't true, and he was probably going to follow up on them after this Jasper Evans news. But again, it's kind of reestablished that, yeah, I can't shake that Fisk is playing, as if all this stuff is telling me that Fisk is playing, even though I can't prove it. I got to look into it. So he looks into it. He investigates. He checks the prison on the whole Jasper Evans matter. He's asking the smart questions here, as Karen and Fogg have kind of like, beat Nadim over the head with by saying, I don't mean that in a negative way, just kind of saying to Nadim, start asking the right questions, man. You're a good character in this show. Ask the right questions.
Right.
And he does. And he's asking, like, how does a man just walk out of prison when he's supposed to be under a lock and key for like he's thrown the hole for a year for stabbing Wilson Fisk? How does he disappear?
Very legitimate. And then the warden is just like, well, some guy must have ticked the wrong box up in the paperwork department. Likely story dragon, as you do.
So we've spoken a little bit of how Nadim has accounted for the aftermath of the bulletin, but I think we should also talk about the aftermath before we get to kind of the big scene that he has in the episode. We're talking about the aftermath's impact on his family and his family life. So Seema, his wife, takes him aside. This is really big. This is a really good scene, a non-cliche scene. Where the wife takes him aside and says, "You lied to us. I called you, while that was going on. And you said you were fine." Of course, she finds out in the news what's happened in the hospital and everything, all the dead people. And again, he's trying to lie to protect his family, but it's not a way out. So that's kind of what he's kind of hit with there.
This echoes the opening scene with Nadim back in episode 1, where she's giving this big speech about how much of a hero Ray is, but then in the background they're having these kind of domestic disputes. And while in episode 1, the domestic stuff was over just a credit card being declined, something that, it sucks, but it's an issue that can be worked through. This is literally a life and death conversation they're having at this point.
Absolutely. So in the end of the day, we see, so Nadim is in a very vulnerable position in this episode with his family. He's with his family. They're all celebrating, unbeknownst to them, in the garage. Daredevil is there. Of course, Daredevil, after all the stuff that went down the previous episode, Nadim is rightfully initially terrified. And I think what really sells him on Daredevil is the fact that he's right. He didn't harm me where he could. I mean, I'm more vulnerable than I could ever be. He's there. He has me dead to rights, and he's saying, "Well, look at the obvious facts here, Nadim. Different costumes.
Right.
You could probably, if he didn't say this, but obviously, if Nadim was really unsure, he could just ask Foggy Nelson, "Hey, were there 2 Daredevils there?" He would say yes, because that's the few witnesses that are there. At least the 3 people that are alive. With Ellison, Karen, and there was a fight going on there. But the point being, that was the fact that he believes him, because he's telling the truth. And I think the best moment is when he Sammy, Nadim's son, comes in there, and of course, Matt having a soft spot for fathers and sons, but secondly, more importantly, he shows him he doesn't want to traumatize the kid, so he allows him to just kind of make up something to get the kid out of there.
Sure.
All right, so again, it's kind of like Nadim taking the temperature on trust here. It's kind of a temporary alliance of trust that he's forging with Daredevil here. So that's kind of where. So Nadim's making the smart calls as well here.
All right, yeah, we'll see where that goes. Of course, episode 8 is going to be a big part of that. So, in the meantime, let's transition over into our next segment. Let's talk about some daring dynamics.
Yes.
Okay, so Foggy and Marcy, man. These two might be the most stable couple of 2010's television, Dragon. They really might be.
Well, yeah, I mean, second to obviously, Jimmy McGill and Kim Wexler. I'm sure
We know that's doomed.
we do, but it's still
There's an
compelling.
undercurrent of tragedy with that one, Dragon.
It hasn't happened yet. I'm holding out hope. A guy can dream, can't he?
All right. But seriously, man, it's so refreshing to see like a hetero couple just, like portrayed on television just as it is. Like, hey, it's a lot of times these couples can really be supportive and lean on each other, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a very, very nice message here.
It's always nice just thinking about it now. They've never had major issues. Like they've always been upfront with each other, and that's why even when they're on opposite sides, they're still such an item together.
Yeah. That's totally why they work.
So of course, in the aftermath, after a very near death experience twice, because Mary tried to basically kill him he tried to kill him with the billy club, and then he just knocked Foggy across the room where he could have killed him if he wanted to. Foggy's very lucky last episode. I want to emphasize that Foggy could have been dead twice. Everyone's on pins and needles over.
Foggy was wearing some character armor last episode.
Yes, one could say that, but obviously Matt saved his bacon there. The second time Foggy is very lucky. Okay, the first time it was second time is gobs and gobs of plot armor, but not a negative way. Like, I'm glad Foggy. We're all lucky. We're all glad Foggy survived.
Sure.
Anyway, so after this near-death experience, it puts things in perspective for him, especially with Marcy, and that kind of leads to a proposal. And very smartly, Marcy's like, "Look, I mean, again, she loves him as well, but it's like, look, we can't."
I want this proposal to come from your heart, not from this,
and not out of fear. Which, of course, is kind of the world that Foggy's is kind of Foggy's champion towards here. We're not under fear of Fisk and like the thugs of Fisk. Let's try to be kind of safe in Hell's Kitchen. It's kind of what he's going for.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Of course, he has unfinished business. Of course, his unfinished business with Fisk, most assuredly, that Foggy's kind of motivated to figure out as well. And before he can even do a proposal or anything, live happily ever after, he has to kind of finish this business with Fisk and ensure the safety of that union as well.
All right.
Of course, them being there for each other in this proposal, of course, it leads to Foggy gets a sense of clarity after again, kind of like taking the edge off, let's say. He does get a sense of clarity, and again, he has like all the papers strawn out, and he gets a great idea. It's going to pay off next episode. All right.
Okay, Matt and Melvin. This is kind of like the big centerpiece of the episode right here.
This is, and of course, we like Melvin Potter, don't we?
I mean, yeah, we do. He's a very tragic, very flawed character, but flawed in like, a sense of like they write him to be flawed, not like, oh, he's a problematic character.
Yeah, he's kind of like he's a refreshingly flawed character, one could say. It's like just the right amount of flaws. Where again, the guy's not perfect, but his heart's in the right place. So Daredevil can't really be mad at him for what he's done. So basically, the dynamic we kind of it's been a while since we've seen Melvin. Of course, the last time we saw Melvin was right before the big Elektra fight. Basically, I want to say the last episode of season 2. That's the last time we saw Melvin. Like, he's Melvin sparing. He's kind of the Lucius Fox for Daredevil in a sense. It's kind of Melvin's role. Where he unwittingly, Melvin is responsible for the nightmare that Matt faces before him with the rogue Daredevil. He made the suit under duress, but he made the suit because they had a deal in place where they keep each other safe. And I remember Matt was gone for a while. He had no idea Matt was really back, and of course now it's the fact that Matt's back, and he kind of had to taint Matt's name, regretfully, but he had to for a threat that Betsy would be, Betsy, kind of his own personal Vanessa, was going to be in jeopardy.
Oh, very much his own personal Vanessa.
But I love that, we have this dynamic that's kind of fundamentally built on a lot of trust, and I would argue a legitimate friendship. I would say in season 2 when we check in on them, there's a legitimate friendship that's kind of built there. They have a back and forth, they have a banter. It's the of course we have the one of my favorite gestures in season 2. One of my favorite bits is when he made him the iconic detachable billy club with the grappling rope and the coil and everything in it.
Right.
He made it for him as like an early Christmas gift, and it was like I thought it was like the nicest thing ever. That's the thing. So that deal is kind of violated here, where Matt feels very betrayed by Melvin this episode. He does. Where Melvin yet again, Melvin, not through his own fault, he makes the wrong choice to protect Betsy yet again, protect his loved one, which is kind of in contrast to what Matt's been doing things the wrong way. So in that sense, he and Melvin are very similar. They've been making the wrong choices to protect their loved ones, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because at this point, like, I feel like Fisk really has Melvin, kind of dead to rights. Like, and that's why I think that Matt ultimately gives up on him, is that there's literally nothing he can do. It's like Melvin will go to the ends of the earth to protect Betsy, and Kingpin will just basically have Melvin do whatever, and just he'll kill Betsy if he doesn't. It's like it's kind of like there's literally nothing to be done about this situation right now.
Exactly. And your heart goes out to Melvin. You do.
And your heart goes out to Matt as well, because Matt knows how much Betsy means to Melvin. He sees firsthand how good Betsy is for Melvin as well, by the way.
Yeah.
Because Betsy gives him that whole speech about it's always you type of people who are trying to get at Melvin because he's got a trusting way about him. And that's a good woman, man, to acknowledge the trust factor there. And I don't know, it feels like such a healthy relationship that's being so violated.
You know what the twisted thing is, personally? And I know we're going to get into this more in the next episode about whether this would be the case or not, but I still hold true, and I'll make my point when we get to the next episode. I'll make my argument there. But I feel that Fisk wouldn't actually hurt Betsy. I think he's just threatening to hurt Betsy, personally. I don't think he would actually hurt her. But
yeah, but I mean, it doesn't really matter either way, because like I said, Melvin, he will go to the ends of the earth if someone threatens Betsy. It's like that's kind of Melvin's ultimate character flaw there.
Well, that's the thing. I'm absolutely with you. What I'm saying is I love the fact that Fisk doesn't even have to actually hurt Betsy for the threat alone. And again, I think on that level too, it's kind of a fascinating thing where, again, it's like there's another, like, a true blue Fisk and Vanessa relationship in Melvin and Betsy that I would like to think in my own little head game, maybe Fisk respects on some level. I don't know. That he knows that and he can manipulate that. I don't know.
Well, what about Foggy and Marcy? Is that not like a love story for the ages in Fisk's eyes? Like, Fisk has just got all these. I like to think that Fisk is invested, he's shipping all these people that he's actively playing a chess game against. Well, look, I think Matt and Claire haven't been an item in a long time, so.
So that's when you get into the soap opera thing, though. If Fisk is having a beat on all these things, regardless, because you gotta remember, Foggy and Marcy were on the rocks for a while, not in the sense they liked each other, in the sense of they were. I think in that sense,
we're on the rocks, and now they're the most stable couple in the show by far, perhaps the most stable couple in the MCU.
Look, in all seriousness, if we're giving this actual consideration, at the end of the day, Foggy, he views Foggy as responsible for separating him from Vanessa. The whole I'll chop both heads off.
Yeah, of course, sure. That's a fair point. I'm just being silly.
No, I know. We're getting back on point here. So the other thing, speaking of Fisk, though, is to kind of bring it back to Melvin, is that it's so interesting that Fisk is the force that initially, way back in season 1, brought these two together and has torn them apart. And we always knew this was coming. We get to see it kind of unfold this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And one other thing, Melvin, I really want to get in there too, is that Melvin is so wonderful when you think of it this way. Melvin is the human tie to Daredevil, the fully, the red suited Daredevil, and the symbol, and basically Daredevil and the symbol of what he represents. And I think that's what really cuts Matt when Betsy brings it up. You're supposed to be a superhero. What are you doing? And it's the fact that, again,
Sure,
Melvin is the
sure.
one who turned him from a vigilante to a superhero with that costume, and what that symbol, what it represents is, keeping people safe, like as kind of a brand, as kind of like a mythic legend that is Daredevil in the tomes of Hell's Kitchen. And it really hurts to see these friends have in this moral gray kind of forced to fight each other. And at the end of the day, he elects to let Melvin lie in the bed that he made with Fisk, because again, like he and Melvin made that deal where, again, you don't keep Betsy safe, but again, Matt wasn't around though, so again, it's a really dicey territory. It's tragic, to say the least. It is.
Yeah.
All right. Lastly, real quick.
All right, let's move on to Nadeem and Fisk, kind of like the dynamic that really sort of jump-started the whole season, if you think about it.
Yeah, that's why we should kind of like focus on this one, Tiki, is because Matt. I felt we got to address this one because this is the last scene they really have with their dynamic in place before the things kind of get exploded with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because so Nadeem, he confronts Fisk after doing his research, so he's relatively sure that, okay, Fisk is playing him, he just can't prove how. And there's this really great scene between the actors here where Nadeem tells him the story of Jiggy.
I love that name.
I just love D'Onofrio as the Kingpin saying, "I'm not this.
I am not Jiggy.
I'm not Jiggy." It's so ridiculous.
I do not, in fact, get jiggy with it.
It's hilarious how I can legitimize Jiggy. No, but seriously, it's a really great parallel. It's kind of a great, kind of a story that he lays out there. There was a guy in the neighborhood who was a helper, exactly like Fisk is for the FBI, and Jiggy, he would help people. He'd set them up with things, kind of like a whole Mama Mabel from Mama Mabel Stokes from Luke Cage. Kind of, it's a story almost like that, where he'd set them up, but at a cost, where Jiggy would smuggle heroin off of everything that he would provide people with, down to like a baby's crib. And the fact that he wants something out of this, he knows that he's working an angle. It's a helper with a catch. It's a really great kind of way he's laying that out.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that Fisk makes the attempt to maintain familiarity and a status quo with Nadeem, considering what's going to happen a few episodes from now. The fact that Fisk is trying to keep Nadeem in the current status quo of, like, Nadeem's in the dark, like, you don't want to ask these questions, Nadeem. He's kind of, one could look at it this way, Tiki, on a rewatch, which is what we're doing with these things. But I haven't watched them since the first time they aired, and on the rewatches for these, for the nitty gritty of it all.
That's almost kind of like the big catch of us doing these so late after the fact. Is like, hey, at least we're almost coming at them, with fresh eyes.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Looking at it this way, it's like this is kind of Fisk tipping him off of, like, Nadeem, if you have a suspicion, I'd recommend, given all the horrible stuff that's going to befall Nadeem a few episodes from now, you don't want to look into this. And I would argue that's out of respect for Nadeem, out of the genuine respect he might hold for Nadeem, because he doesn't need Nadeem regardless. But again, trying to keep him in the dark and not just kind of going the strong-armed approach, I think that's out of respect. It's like when he mentioned Seema, I don't think it's like threatening his wife. I think he's just mentioning his wife's name just by happenstance.
Sure.
And one last thing I thought was very fascinating. The wonderful thing I've always heralded the Kingpin with, and I still love with this character, is that he doesn't lie. Fisk, he manipulates for sure, but he doesn't necessarily lie, because when Nadeem asked him, like, essentially, are you Jiggy, or he specifically asked, did Jasper Evans stab you as like a frame up? Did he stab you so you could get out of prison? And Fisk says something along the lines of, you sully yourself, basically you disservice yourself with your desperation, Agent Nadeem. That's his response, something along those lines. That's his response. He doesn't lie, he just gives him that response and saying that, again, you are desperate, that's a fact. But again, he's not confirming nor denying it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, good stuff.
And Fisk never lied to Nadeem during this arrangement. He never did. Okay.
All right, moving on. Let's talk about how this episode dared to be different.
There's a lot of really interesting stuff in this episode. The biggest, I guess, one of the really big ones I want to hit on right out the gates is the conversation. Of course, we use the device, which is going to pay off in a really great thing an episode or so from now, but I love it. I love it here. This was almost my blinding moment. I thought it was this good. The conversation, a very aftermath-driven conversation, by the way, kind of conversation in the aftermath of Matt's big decision in the episode between Matt and Fisk. in kind of the part of me wants to say the locker room, because I mean there are lockers. I mean, I guess in the basement where he's staying in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's a lot of setup for. I think we set something up with Matt's arc for the history of season 3 here, where I think this conversation they have complements the premise of season 3 and the series as a whole, where there's this really beautifully written line that Fisk says to Daredevil, where he says that Matt's destiny is to die doing the right thing like Jack Murdoch. Basically, so let me rephrase that. What we set up is that in this episode, in that scene, towards the very end of the episode, where Fisk is basically chastising Matt. Yes, you made the choice to leave Melvin behind. You did that, but tell me, part of you hesitated because you were hoping for like a sign from God would tell you, it was the right thing to do, or a sign God would allow you to go back to help him. You were relieved, weren't you? Admit again. Of course, it's Matt's own guilt providing the voice of Fisk here. Everything Fisk is saying.
I like that we go back to that. By the way, I like that we don't just drop that whole device.
Yeah, and basically what we frame here, that the way Matt's kind of looking at himself here, and again, the ultimate kind of sell of the series really comes in the fray with this line here, that Daredevil's destiny is to either die doing the right thing like Jack Murdoch or become like Fisk. That's kind of what we have put forth here. Don't you think that's interesting?
It is, for sure.
Yeah, because again, it's like he's making decisions that, Fisk appears after he makes that decision. Therefore, Matt thinks he's becoming like Fisk, which makes him sick to his stomach. But of course, if you do the right thing, again, he would have made things like 20 times more difficult. He would have had taken out FBI agents, which would have which would have gone the conventional route of, oh, Daredevil must be we find Daredevil here, we find the suit here. All this happens, and it would have been like 20 steps back compared to the 2 steps back he's working from now. And again, that would have ultimately, if he keeps doing the right thing, like going back for Melvin, doing all these things, his destiny is to die like Jack Murdoch died, like his father. And they what kind of life is that? And then Matt's asking the bigger questions this season. Is that what I want to do with my life? Do I want to just keep doing the right thing until I die? It's really good, really smart questions we're asking here.
Yeah, I got to admit, Dragon, that's some subtext I didn't really pick up on, but hey, that's what you're here for, right? So,
I mean, it's pretty cool, though.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Hit us with a few, by all means.
I mean, I honestly don't have that much for this episode, just because I feel like this is kind of a transitional episode. So really, it's not like a big, oh my God, so much huge stuff happened. But I mean, I do appreciate that this is a more kind of I want to say kind of meditative episode. Of course, the title very much plays into it. As we've kind of examined through this season, especially, I feel like the titles really are really strong this season, with each character really gets explored through the title, and that's definitely clear here. And so, yeah, I mean, I like the fact that there's virtually no action outside of one scene that we'll get into, and it's not like a typical Marvel Netflix thing of it's just basically going to be an exposition dump. No, it's like we're taking the time to really explore these characters, and, so it is a strong episode in that regard, for sure. I just think, like I said, it's not the most eventful episode, so I don't have a ton to add in this department.
If I could piggyback off of you speaking of the action here, because I did notice something. I should have noticed episodes before. It's not that I never noticed it, but something that really kind of became apparent to me with the episode, the point you just made, Tiki, is that we're smartly using minimal action to build up to one sequence. If you notice, Tiki, that's what we've been doing entirely for this season. Probably in other seasons too, but at the very least this season, think about it. We build up to one action sequence.
Yeah, for sure. You're right.
Keep doing that. I mean, not counting Fisk is kind of orchestrated.
And honestly, I think that works a lot better than a show that just hey, action sequence, exposition, action sequence, exposition.
Absolutely. Think about it. Okay, episode. I'm going to quickly just roll through them because I think the rest is going to go by rather quickly. Just real quick.
Sure.
So, episode 1, you have again Matt trying to get back into the swing of things and almost dying in the process. Episode 2, I mean, he strategically takes out those guys. So that's barely a fight. He just kind of essentially cattle prods a few guys. But right. You have the Fisk. You have the attack, the Albanians' attack on Fisk. That's your big major action set piece at the end. Episode 3, of course, that's the big parking garage scene. 4 is the prison. Five is, I mean, it's less of a fight. It's more of Dex's, from what I can recall, it's more of like kind of Dex's trashing the apartment at the end. So again, it's a big kind of actiony crux.
But that episode probably does have the least, the least action in the season, but not in a bad way because
Yeah, and again, it does build to a point though. It
episode.
builds to like kind of a room trashing. So again, it's
Yeah.
building to a big kind of action-driven set piece, or well, I mean, in some sense of the word. Six, of course, six is the big Daredevil versus Daredevil fight, and then we're here with the big Melvin Daredevil thing. Yeah.
All right.
Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any major ones here. Very again, very clever frame up with basically connecting the masked vigilante to the red suit. This is the thing all the time where in Tiki on a CW show or on a regular show, what you would have is people making the blind assumption that it can only possibly be Daredevil by any stretch.
Right.
Think about how clever this is. We're literally, if the FBI shows up when you have Daredevil going to his known associate to have to put on the red costume, he's dead to rights. There's no way, no getting around. Okay, the masked vigilante, it's the same guy. That's a really smart way of okay, that's why it just really, it's a super smart frame up that we rarely see cleverly figured out. Like we're taking the right beats in the frame up, not just like the beats of just people's kind of the masses assuming the same point here.
Mm-hmm.
We called Foggy out in the proposal, where again we didn't just like the whole Marcy saying yes and Foggy oh god.
Yeah, you're right. That was a good kind of subversion for sure.
The Kingpin wall shot was really cool to start, where again he's looking at the white wall, and again it kind of telegraphs what we were talking about earlier. Again, this rabbit in a snowstorm is not there, but it's a white wall, therefore he always has rabbit in a snowstorm. He doesn't need it. But
that's the big. I feel like that's like one of the biggest symbols of the whole series is the white wall. The fact that like rabbit in a snowstorm is like kind of proverbial with him at all times.
Exactly, it's fascinating. Okay, Ellison putting two and two together rather quickly in the whole fact of wait, you know that's not Daredevil, and just he asked her point blank. He puts two and two together rather quickly. That oh my god, Karen Page knows Daredevil. Tell me who he is right now. You're fired.
Oh.
A lot more emotionally charged than that, but Jeffrey Cantor's doing it far better than I right now. But let's see. Again, the theme of Aftermath, of course, the overall theme of the Aftermath, how it's how people are reevaluating their methodologies, how we're adapting to the new status quo. There's a great level of payoff to season one with the Melvin stuff, of course, and Karen stuff as well. Of course, Rabbit in a Snowstorm as well. It's going to be like a third just to list off there. A lot of payoff from season one. Overall in the season, but this episode especially. Nadim's realistic doubts, the action overall. Non-cliche. We have a non-cliche scene between the FBI agent and the fugitive with that conversation with Matt, which I really want to herald that because that's such a rare scene that we got there. We don't have to go through like a whole nothing against the fugitive movie with Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones. We have to go through a whole thing of like, I didn't kill my wife. He says, you're right. Just the whole. You have to go through like a whole like, is he telling the truth? I don't want to believe he's telling the truth. We have to go through. I have to jump through those because as good as the fugitive is. And the moral compromise parallel, but like the last big thing, we kind of glazed over this a little bit with Nadim, so I should bring it up here. The moral compromise parallel between Matt and Nadim, where they both in this episode make kind of a moral compromise, where they both make this compromise, then they work their way back from it. Where Matt, of course, he chooses not to save Melvin. Nadim, he has the scene with Hatley. He has a scene with Hatley here where he wants to where he basically wants to, she wants to feed it up to the higher ups on the food chain and everything. Where Nadim, opts to not do that because again, it would compromise the success that he's just gotten right now with his family and everything, the stability. And so again, that doubt, they're both kind of making these compromises to better their own lives, but they're both regretting, and that just leads to the team.
All right.
That's overall good there.
Okay, so with that in mind, let's transition to the next spot. Let's talk about our blinding moments. Awesome.
Blinded me with Murdoch.
All right, so of course I will start because my moment comes literally right at the start of the episode. First of all, the reveal that Kingpin has this like kind of secret bunker within the suite he's staying in, all kind of a game changer, really. It kind of makes you see the events in almost a different perspective. Like, oh my God, this runs deeper than we even thought it did. You know what I mean? Like, he really has his finger on the pulse. There's no, at this point, Dragon, there's no illusion of him being any kind of a prisoner or any kind of a convict in this situation. You know, it's like he's fully in control with this reveal. But not only that, Dragon, but of course, this is going to go by super quick. But my God, I love the reaction, and I know you do too. I love the reaction when he's listening to the news and all the news, you know, all the different stations are saying that Daredevil is the cause of the bulletin attack. And yeah, Dragon, he's just like that fat kid at the candy store. He's like, oh my God, I've got a $20 bill and I could have whatever I want. This is going to be the best day of my life. You know, it's just like he's just so self-satisfied, and I love it. It's one of D'Onofrio's best non-verbal performances of the season, I think.
Just that gleeful smile at it feels so much like a born again moment there, where he's just hearing like, you know, Daredevil's been framed, you know, Daredevil is there, and that smile, like, yes, I got him. It's like that's so much the Kingpin. I love it. Just little, like those little Kingpin's kind of a stirring guy, but you know, having those few gleeful moments though, it's just it says so much, and that's the thing. Kingpin keeps progressively getting more and more powerful, and we keep unraveling the mystery. Like, how in control is he? And of course, ultimately to the point, like, oh my God, he's so powerful.
right. So...
Okay, that was also a runner-up for my blinding moment as well. That was a good one.
Okay.
My blinding moment is a little later in the episode. I guess kind of like one of the big centerpieces of it all. The Daredevil gladiator fight. Yes, folks, the gladiator fight. We're finally here. He's wearing the bulletproof, he's wearing the bulletproof kind of tunic vest thing underneath his jacket. You know, he's basically, obviously he's not head to toe in the costume, but that's the costume in essence. And I believe in the, I want to say, I forget if it was Born Again specifically, because I want to say whenever there is a fight where he's basically wearing kind of a pache of the gladiator, so he's not like decked out head to toe in the helmet and everything, but he basically wears the you know, it's kind of like something on top of the gladiator, you know, suit, which is basically what we have here. So it's really faithful. I bring this up because the action's really good. It's more so what's motivating this fight. It's the fact that we take an iconic part of the comics that we hinted at way back in season 1. Like, people never expected we were going to see the full fight between, you know, Daredevil and Melvin. And there was an assumption that there was a hope, I guess. This is a big payoff from season 1. There was a hope, okay, make this deal to keep Betsy safe, so if Kingpin ever gets revenge on Betsy, then we're going to see the other half of this scene, this iconic fight from the comics where it's a gladiator turning on Daredevil despite them kind of reaching a deal, reaching an agreement. Where classically in the comics, Daredevil goes to fight the gladiator. I don't think it was specifically the Kingpin originally. It's just the idea of the gladiator was fighting Daredevil to protect Betsy. That was the whole crux. And then Daredevil helped him out, and they teamed up. And from that point forward, Gladiator became an anti-hero, where he's kind of a reformed bad guy in costume designer. That was Gladiator's role in the books. And of course, ultimately, that would pay off in Born Again, where he makes the Daredevil suit. Anyway. So, you know, it's just a big payoff from season 1. It's a really well orchestrated fight. It has like the saw blades and everything, and we get to see it even more fleshed out than we did way back during the little tease of it we had in season 1. My favorite part of all of this, too, just kind of, we are kind of touching on a little bit lightly here, but just to talk about the moment itself. It's such a sad moment to see these two friends kind of battle each other, and at the end there, where he has to leave Melvin behind. And you had the scene where Matt's walking down a hallway. It kind of harkens back to when he left the Russian, when he left Anatoly and not Anatoly. God, it's been so long. Anatoly and Vlad and Anatoly. Vlad's the brother. Okay, Vlad's the one where he was basically cauterizing the wound on Vlad. He left Vlad behind. He's walking down the hallway. It's kind of a shot akin to that almost, where he's walking down the hallway and Matt hears, and of course we know his hearing's exceptional, so he's hearing this like, I gotta save Betsy! I gotta save Betsy! You feel so bad for Melvin, and of course it's kind of the moment it's almost like that moment from Aquaman, where again it's like the hero choosing not to save the bad guy, or in this case the antagonist to him in the moment here, where it's like he chooses not to save Melvin. He made his own bed, and you know he's kind of in the right, but it's like, oh man, poor Matt. And of course if I had to chain it to anything, it would be that conversation where basically Matt voices his guilt over this moment. So it's a really great, stirring moment and a big payoff for the whole series. So it's a good moment. It's an exceptional moment. One could say blinding. Okay.
All right. Okay, Dragon, I got to admit, we've already kind of gone over some of this stuff with the aftermath of it all, so this should go by rather quickly. Let's talk about the Braille Trail.
Okay, so as I mentioned, just to kind of basically mark it off like a bingo caller here, the
Okay.
gladiator fight. We had the gladiator fights. Melvin Potter, like in Born Again, he made the second Daredevil suit, so that's a big Born Again call that we had done here.
Well, we foreshadowed the Karen flashback. We kind of get some, we kind of put some more mystery into Karen's backstory. Like, what did she do that made her family distance from her so much?
We mentioned Paxton specifically is on the phone, so we got that too. Nadeem and Hatley. So this is important. Nadeem and Hatley have a conversation about calling in Fisk, conning the FBI. And again, Hatley wanted to get on the phone to call in to her superiors, and we, the audience, well, you and I, having seen it, you've seen it way back when. We know who her superiors are, so we know this. Okay, Hatley's. Either way, Hatley would have been protected here. So Hatley's. Nadeem would have been screwed either way, being the point here, but he doesn't know it yet.
Right.
Okay, Bullseye's laying low, and he's beginning to get unstable, and Fisk knows this, and we're going to check in on this.
Yes, I like that. By the way, that's another thing that I meant to put into my Dare to be Different, is that I like that we just flat out bench Bullseye after such a big episode. It was smart writing on their part to really give him a breather, because the big villain of the season doesn't have to be in every episode. Sometimes you feel his presence even more when he's not there.
Yep. Karen lost her job, and overall she's on the rocks with Ellison in a major way.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, Karen, again, the blood spots on her sleeve. Well, here's the thing. It's not just the whole metaphor of blood on your hands, but specifically...
If this is the first time I was watching this, I would, swear to God, yeah, it looks like we're really building to Karen dying, guys. I think this is it. I was shocked that Karen made it through this season, Dragon. I'll say that much.
That's the thing. So the blood spots on her sleeve, again, not even the metaphor withstanding, but more accurately, though, we're going to see blood. Again, Tiki, it could have been anything. It could have just been a slathering of blood, but I'm going to argue this to you. I think it's blood spots specifically for a moment in the flashback when we get to that episode, because they were blood spots,
Uh-huh. Yeah, sure.
Make that call. That's kind of, again, it's a symbol of her past on her sleeve.
Right. Right. Ooh. Sure.
All right, Rabbit in a Snowstorm. Fisk wanting Rabbit in a Snowstorm. We learn that there's an ownership claim. We're going to see some wonderful payoff to this a few episodes down the line. So the Rabbit in the Snowstorm being out of Fisk's hands right now, and he's not happy about it. The secret room, and Fisk having more control than the FBI thinks.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, the big Betsy payoff, where we find out Betsy's his parole officer. You remember the fan theory that Betsy was going to be a figment of Melvin's imagination? You remember that?
No, I don't.
yeah, way back in season 1, the idea was that Fisk just...
Did we talk about that?
I'm pretty sure we did. At least I don't know if it was on air, and I know I told you about it. The idea that people have theorized that Betsy was a figment of Melvin's imagination, and that Fisk just basically he used his psychology against him on that.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah, but no, it was really great that we saw an actual. But bear in mind, I believe she was real in the comics. I'm saying it would have been a new idea if anything.
Yeah, sure.
But still, we got to see Betsy. Betsy seemed like a really nice character, by the way. I don't think we're going to see her again, but it was nice to see her. Matt. Okay, this is a big one. Okay, this when I was watching this the first time way back, I was so geeking out. You know what? We're fine right now. I'm not going to push it to get any better, but you know what? A Daredevil versus Daredevil fight where they're both in the red suit, or a version of the red suit would be pretty cool. But Matt in this episode, he puts his foot down, saying he rejects Hey, look, would it be cool? Yes, but I absolutely understand it would have violated the crux of Matt's arc this season. We couldn't put him in the red.
Sure.
But again, though, many people have said, if we ever see a new Daredevil suit, which unfortunately, folks, I can say that's the only way we're going to see another Daredevil. He's going to have to be in a new red suit. I'll say that much. I know they're selling off the old one.
Oh, really?
But again, I'm not going to say it's never be never, because again, we still haven't seen what the 2Ds on the red suit though. So the point being, he rejects the new suit because he rejects what it stands for. Therefore, he rejects the red suit this episode. All right, let's see. Seema laying down the law with Nadeem, which is going to have some consequence for him. We mentioned Jack Murdoch again. It's going to have some crux in the next episode, and especially the next basically the next 2 episodes that follow are going to be really Jack Murdoch-y.
Okay.
It's progressively more Jack Murdoch related. The point is, Jack Murdoch is on Matt's mind, progressively going to get on Matt's mind more so as the episodes go on. I think. Oh, there's a real subtle one I caught. Unless you got anything else, I got one last one.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Go ahead.
The last one that really caught me. Here's a deep one. Fisk. Okay, so when Nadim's talking to Hatley, they mention that basically, of course, Hatley going along with Nadim's saying, Nadim says, if Fisk is playing us, we want to bury him. We're going to bury Fisk. And given Nadim's fate, I think, burying Fisk, I think it's going to definitely pay off in what happens in Nadim.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
A little subtle one there, but we'll get to that when we get to like episode 11 or 12, probably. All right.
Uh-huh. Okay. Let's get to the Nelson and Murdoch verdict. All right. Well, I switch over here. Dragon, why don't you go first?
Okay, end of the day, this episode, it's a really solid break in between the arcs, or in the action, the greater action of the piece. It allows our cast to reflect, our cast of characters to reflect. We set up the rest of the season. We kind of set up the rest of the season here, where we're going with things. I love Matt's inner struggle, making the tough calls, and Fisk is, and of course, like Fisk is kind of revealing and. Fisk reveling in how he's screwing up Daredevil's life. He's love Fisk is reveling in the aftermath and like I was just screwing Daredevil again, as you said, the fat kid in the candy store. He's happy as all get out again. If he had that painting, he'd be 100%. But he's reveling in it all. It's a great setup. It's a great setup episode overall. It has great action with moral consequences, and again, it is all about the aftermath of our choices. That's thematically what the episode is about, and I think it carries itself very well. All right.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more quiet episodes of the season, but for a reason, because like you said, it is all about the aftermath. It's not about like big shocking revelations or anything like that. So I think it works well. We get a lot of good stuff with Fisk and kind of like his power just growing and growing. It's interesting because I've heard criticisms of this episode where it's like, oh, Fisk is so powerful at this point that he's like he lacks any of the ambiguity of season one. I'm like, yeah, but he's getting more and more powerful. I mean, he's more threatening than ever. So I really don't get those criticisms.
And remember, with the ambiguity, it's not that he's getting more powerful. It's that we the audience we're seeing just how powerful he is right now.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So I don't see that as a bad thing. But in my research, I did see that some people kind of had that criticism with this episode. And basically I think that this episode, to put it simply, everyone's really on the right track. This is a good place setting episode, but not in a bad way at all. It's a good place setting episode to really get everyone on the right page moving into the second half of the season. And in that regard, I think it sets everything up quite nicely. So yeah, that's about it. All right. So that's all for now until our next daring installment of Discerning Daredevil. Excelsior!
Enough said.
Let's get jiggy with it.